So what's up, YouTube? What's up, Twitch chat? Because we are recording this live. First take, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it goes well and we don't have to do another, or I don't have to do another off stream. We can just go ahead and get this out of the way. But we're going through the new set, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and pulling out some of the cards that I'm planning on testing out in a Shadow Shell, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe all of them. Who knows? Talk about some of like the pros and cons on them, and some of like what I see as potentially enough of an upside to check it out. Keep the video pretty brief, pretty moving along, but maybe this will inspire some of you to go try out some of these cards as well. Even if it doesn't, you'll at least know like what my thought process is when evaluating cards of a new set. So this is in no particular order. So don't start the video and see this first one and be like, that's it. That's the card. Forget everything else. No particular order. Is just in the order that Mythic Spoiler presented the cards as I scrolled down. So, yeah. First off, we got Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. I have no idea what a Seneschal is. Actually, we're gonna Google it. I don't even know if it has a definition, but we're gonna find out. So Seneschal. Seneschal is a steward or major domo of a medieval great house. So kind of like a lord, I guess. But Inti is 1 in a red for a 2/2 human knight, legendary human knight. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until the end of the turn. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. So some of the positives we're seeing with Inti: 2 mana body, positive. When you attack with it and you ditch a card, then you can put a 1/1 counter on itself and it gains trample. So you could potentially just like discard a card, immediately start growing it up. Pretty cool that it's not on another creature. And then whenever you discard a card, you get to immediately loot. So you get to ditch something dead in your hand, exile the top card of your library. You can play it. Also works really well with like Street Wraith. You cycle your Street Wraith, discard it. This immediately exiles the top card of your library. So you get to exile a card and draw a card, get 2 looks off Wraith. If you're playing something like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, then your trigger to ditch 2 and draw 2 triggers this. So you would actually draw 2 plus exile another card off the top. Only 1, because it does say discard 1 or more. So you would draw 2, discard a third off the top of your library. It kind of gives like that questing druid-ish feel, but on a body that can kind of attack a little better without more things needing to happen. So pretty cool. Also the fact that it is may discard a card instead of you have to discard a card makes it kind of comparable, yet it's still a little different than Territorial Kavu, that I think forces you to discard if you have the ability to discard if you have a card in hand. So pretty cool there. Like I said, reasonable-ish body, 2/2 on turn 2, attacking into a 2 or into a 3/3. So it does dodge Bowmaster unless they put the ping, the army, and the Bowmaster itself blocking on it. So it would just trade with the Bowmaster. Plus the fact that it doesn't say draw a card means it doesn't trigger the Bowmaster. So kind of cool. Would be interesting to see it have like first strike or something. I mean, knights, like I think first strike when I think knights. But I had to point this one out as well because the Dogfish and I have got a little bit of a challenge that's going to go on to see if he can trophy with Inti before or after I can trophy with the Ancient One, which we'll get to that as well. So I figured I would bring up both of these cards so you know what's going on there. Dogfish, speaking of which, what's up? good timing. So we are going to be seeing a little bit of this card in the first couple weeks after the set comes out, at least until one of us trophies with one or the other. But that's Inti. Could be pretty useful in like a more aggressive shadow build. Also just putting counters on things like Ledger Shredder, Ragavan, Darcy, all very relevant. And it doesn't just trigger off Inti. I've got a point. It does trigger off whatever creature attacks. So if you have like a turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 Inti, you can attack in with the Ragavan, put a counter on the Ragavan, get in for 3, discard a card, draw a card, then get a Ragavan trigger. So it's pretty cool because it can snowball a little bit. You'll trophy with Inti before you trophy with Ancient One. We'll see. We're going to be getting to Ancient One in a minute, so don't worry. Second card, Stalactite Stalker. Not so excited about this one, but when you see like a 1-mana 1/1 with Menace that grows, you got to at least look at it. So it's a 1/1, like I said, 1/1 Goblin Rogue for 1 black with Menace. The beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, you put a 1/1 counter on it. So my end step, descended just means if a permanent entered the graveyard from the battlefield. So I think it's entered the graveyard from anywhere, actually. I'm pretty sure it's anywhere. So if I fetch, turns on descended. If I crack a bauble, turns it on. I'm pretty sure if I cycle a Street Wraith, it turns it on. Any of that lets you put a 1/1 counter on the Stalactite Stalker at the end step. So 9 times out of 10, it's going to be turn 1, you got a 2/2 Menace. Turn 2, you attack with a 2/2 Menace. You got a 3/3 Menace at the end of the turn. And hopefully keep growing a little bit. I think it's a cool card on exactly turn 1 and then falls off very aggressively after that. Because like if you top deck one of these turn 4, turn 5, you got no permanents going to the graveyard. It's not growing. It does have an additional activated ability. For 2 and a black, you can sacrifice it. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is its power. So you could theoretically play it on 1, get it up to 3/3, 4/4, whatever, attack in with the Menace guy, and then maybe sack it off to take out an opposing Omnath or opposing Fury on response to a trigger, whatever the case may be. But the fact that I think it's so slanted towards being good on turn 1 in a format where you've got Ragavan, Darcy, Thoughtseize, now Preordain on turn 1, means it's competing with some pretty high power cards. And for that reason, I'll try it out, but I don't see it being any sort of a staple. Next up, we got Breeches, Eager Pillager. This one, I basically just wanted to mention because of Ragavan. I think that if you're not heavy on 4 Ragavan and like taking advantage of playing Ragavan, there's probably not much of a reason to play this one. I'm actually going to throw one more card in here after this just because this is a pirate. So it does 2 and a red. Legendary Goblin Pirate, 3/3, first strike. So reasonable body. Whenever a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. So create a treasure. Target creature can't block. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So it could turn your Ragavan into like forcing something to not be able to block, or exile the top card. You can play it. And kind of the reason I bring it in is because of this other pirate, Captain Storm, Cosmium Raider, blue and red for a 2/2 legendary human pirate. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target pirate you control. So something like turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 Captain Storm, play a bauble, put a counter on your Ragavan. Now all of a sudden it dodges Bowmaster. Or when the Ragavan attacks and hits and you create a treasure token, that triggers the Captain Storm. You can put a counter on the Ragavan. Now, again, it survives Bowmaster. So things like that. You just want to pay attention to some of these like 2-card 2-card value combos and stuff that are relevant in the current meta. Being able to dodge Bowmaster, obviously relevant, but at the same time, going to all these like legendary pirates can be a little clunky, so keep an eye out for that. But I just wanted to point out that like little bit of a pirate sub theme, so maybe if there's another pirate that you're considering playing before and you're fetching and shocking aggressively for this life total, maybe it could fit into some sort of a Grixis shell. But I kind of just wanted to point those out because they were together. Did we review the black pay 3 life removal yet? No, we have not yet, but it is on the list. Don't you worry. Next up, Tishana's Tidebinder, 2 and a blue for a Merfolk, a 3/2, has flash. I know if you can't read Japanese, I'm sorry, you're just not going to know what the card does. Even if it might be Chinese. I don't even know. I am uncultured, southern United States, barely speak English good. But it says, when Tishana's Tidebinder enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an artifact, creature, or planeswalker's ability is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities until Tishana's Tidebinder leaves the battlefield. You cannot target mana abilities because they, for one, don't use the stack, and 2, I guess it doesn't want you stifling lands. Whatever. So cool Merfolk. It is relevant in like the Dimir Shadow Shells that this has flash. Not only because of the activated ability, but just any creature that would consider for that deck. I want to kind of keep it as instant speed as possible. For me personally, you might be different, but for me, I want to keep the deck as instant speed as possible. So ETB countering an activated ability is cool. I think the most prevalent ability right now would be like the One Ring. But you could also like counter the ETB trigger on and up the Beanstalk. And now that Beanstalk loses all abilities to draw cards in the future. So that's pretty cool. You can counter a Planeswalker ability and that thing becomes an expensive paperweight. You could counter fetch land, expedition map getting cracked, a settled Planeswalker loyalty ability, ETB ability on something like Bowmaster if you wanted to draw a bunch of cards after. Amulet Titan, like an Amulet ETB trigger. I think you could hit an Amulet, right? Hit the untap trigger on an Amulet, and then it just would never untap anything again. So that's kind of cool. What else could we get? Stop an Undying. Well, yeah, you could stop an Undying trigger from something that's in the graveyard, but you wouldn't be able to get any value out of the not get any more abilities because they would just be in the graveyard. But like stifling Fable of the Mirror Breaker on ETB and getting to just shut it off completely. That's pretty cool. Yeah, shuts down Cauldron. Shuts down like Grist. Grist is a problem card. So I think there is like a lot of usefulness for stifling an ability right now. Obviously, we've had cards like the 1 in a blue, Tails In, that counters an activated or triggered ability. But that didn't come attached to a 3/2 body for 1 more mana. So very relevant that this actually gets to attack and block and stuff like that. The first comment on here says, prepare to be get got. I feel like you're not going to get got a ton because it is 3 mana. So it is kind of pricey. But in those turns where like nothing else is going on, or you know your opponent is going to activate a ring or play a ring, then this could be something. Just be careful that like if your opponent plays out a ring and you respond to the ETB trigger and Tidebinder, they can still like draw a card, so it does replace itself. They can't draw future cards, but they can draw one with the Tidebinder stifle trigger on the stack. But I mean, obviously them drawing 1 card is better than them drawing 23 and ending the game, so yeah. That's Tidebinder. Get Lost. Just me saying it to chat, not the card name, but just all of you get out of here now. 1 and a white, instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. So pretty versatile. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. So map tokens are artifacts with 1 mana, tap, sacrifice this artifact, target creature you control explores, activate only as a sorcery. So against decks like the Beanstalk decks, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be able to take out a Beanstalk, a Teferi, Renin 6, Omnath, whatever, for 2 mana at instant speed, and they're just never going to get to make use of those treasure tokens. Or those map tokens, sorry. They could map onto maybe a Shardless Agent. They can't evoke an elemental and respond to the evoke trigger with activating one of these map tokens. So that makes them a lot worse. I think the flexibility of being able to hit like Planeswalkers, Leyline Binding, if your opponent boards into like Endurance or something like that, having an additional answer to those is pretty cool. Also, the fact that it's instant speed, very relevant when you're comparing it to stuff like Prismatic Ending. But I think just being able to chip away at some of those more impactful spells, say you're up against Rhinos, being able to hit a Leyline Binding one turn and then an actual Rhino the next turn, or if you're up against blue-white control and you get to hit a Teferi or a Leyline Binding, and then late game they fire up that Hive of the Eye Tyrants and you can hit that. That's cool. Not hitting artifacts could be relevant, but it is like a very flexible card that I think hits something out of like every deck in the current meta. And I don't think the map tokens are going to be that impactful, because at the end of the day, exploring is just like, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can put it into hand. If it's a non-land, you can put it into the graveyard. If you put it into the graveyard, then the creature gets a +1/+1 counter. So it's not some into-the-world token that you're giving them. And I think against a lot of the decks that this is relevant against, especially things like the 4-color piles, then it doesn't even matter that you're giving them map tokens. Just another annoying white kill everything spell. Pretty much. It's a lot worse against us because we typically have a good number of creatures, so we can kind of take advantage of that a little bit better. But for a lot of other decks, they're not going to have the creature base to really explore, or if they do have a creature, they probably don't want to spend the mana doing it. This was like a personal pick of mine that I want to try out. So Tarrian's Journal, 1 and a black, legendary artifact. You tap it to sacrifice another artifact or creature and draw a card. You activate only as a sorcery. So in my mind, like, sacrifice a Bowmaster token, sacrifice a Ragavan that's gotten stonewalled, sacrifice an extra Ragavan if you got a second one in hand, whatever the case may be, something like that. And then you can pay to tap it, discard your hand to flip it, to transform it. In a lot of games, you get top decking fairly quickly, so discarding your hand's not the end of the world. And then it flips into the Tomb of Aclazotz. I don't know if that's the name or if that's just like somebody having a seizure in close proximity to the card, but it's a legendary cave. You tap it to add a black, and then it's got this other ability. Tap, you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. Note, it does not say tap, you may cast target creature spell from your graveyard this turn. Just you may cast a creature from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield with a finality counter on it, and it's a vampire in addition to its other types. So the finality counter says if it would die, you exile it instead. Flashback for creatures is the best that I can explain it. So being able to like tap it and just start flashing back a creature every turn. Doesn't gain haste or anything, but kind of like, what's it called? An Underworld Breach, but spread out over a bunch of turns instead of one. You don't really need to ditch your hand, but you're playing out your hand anyway. So it could be a cool idea to kind of, one, turn your dead stuff, your dead creatures, your extra treasure tokens off Ragavans into cards. And then 2, being able to ditch whatever dead stuff in hand late, flip it into a land that lets you just bring back a creature every turn, might help provide enough pressure in the mid to late game. Up next, Souls of the Lost. 1 and a black. Creature Spirit. Star/star+1. Very reminiscent of Tarmogoyf. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or sacrifice a permanent. Okay? Fathomless Descent. Soul of the Lost's power is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Okay. Lot to unpack here. So, first off, the additional cost to sacrifice a permanent or discard a card. This could be very relevant. It could be very irrelevant. When I say very relevant, I mean if you're just trying to play this thing on curve and you're trying to get value out of all your cards from your hand on the battlefield, then this is a feels bad. Like if you have to discard a live spell, if you have to sack your second land and you don't have a third, really big drawback. On the other side, it could be irrelevant. If the ability requires you to sacrifice some artifact that gave you value on ETB and you don't need it anymore. Better yet, I think there's like a 2-mana artifact in this set that is ETB or go to the graveyard, draw a card. Kind of like that old 2 colorless one that I can't think of the name of, but everybody probably knows besides me. Something like that. Being able to draw a card, play this, sack it, draw a card, buff its power by 1. Pretty relevant. Fetches, pump it up. Mishra's Bauble, Ichor Wellspring. Yes, thank you, Kevin. Mishra's Bauble pumps it up. Fetches, pump it up. Street Wraith, creatures that your opponents kill. Planeswalkers in the bin. Anything like that, all pump it up. Note, it does only care about your graveyard, not your opponent's graveyard. So it's not quite Tarmogoyf levels in that regard. What's that Hayashi Red artifact? Oh, the one that sacks makes like a 2/2. Yeah, the synthesizer. Good call. Something like that. Yeah, could absolutely create some extra value for this. I have seen some people Colony Garden turn 1 and this turn 2. There you go. A little bit smaller without the fetches, but yes, you get the idea. I like anything that includes Colony Garden too, so big thumbs up for that. A lot of people are comparing it to Tarmogoyf. I don't think it's going to be as good as Tarmogoyf in the decks that are already running Tarmogoyf. That being said, if you're on something like Jund Shadow and you don't think the green's worth it and you want to go Rakdos, this could be a replacement for another like solid turn 2 body. Because if you're able to fetch Shock Thoughtseize on 1, bobble yourself, fetch Shock, Wraith, this on 2, or discard a Kroxa or something, then all of a sudden you're looking at like a 2-mana 4/5, fetch, bobble, Wraith, Kroxa, 2-mana 5/6 for a not crazy line. Like this isn't a magical Christmas land line. This is fairly often, fairly consistently, and gets it up to a 2-mana 5/6. Well, that dodges Bolt and Unholy Heat unless they get Delirium. But if you have a third fetch on turn 3, then all of a sudden it's a 6/7, dodges Unholy Heat. Only encountered permanents in Exile 2. It would be better. Would be better if you could play this through like what's it called? Rest in Peace and stuff like that, then it would be really dope. But if you're already playing Tarmogoyf, then you already know that like Grave Hate can be an issue. Not always is, but can be. And this is just going to lose to like basically all the same stuff Tarmogoyf is. But it's only, in my opinion, it's only going to be a positive, strong card if you're able to make the discard or sack a permanent not relevant. Like, if you're able to make that a positive in some regard, ditch something that you want in the graveyard, or like sack something you want getting sacked, then it could be positive. Next up, Bitter Triumph. Oh, baby. So, 1 and a black, as an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Is an instant. First comparison, Infernal Grasp. 1 and a black, destroy target creature, pay 2 life. Or you lose 2 life, whatever the wording on it is. Just, you have 2 less life, they have 1 less creature. Positives. Positives. Being able to hit creature and planeswalker. Planeswalker is very relevant right now with Teferis and Renin 6s. Things like that run around that you don't want to be running around. So, really cool in that regard. The additional cost, discard a card or pay 3 life. I don't think that 1 extra life loss is relevant enough for you to want to play Infernal Grasp over this strictly on the basis of less life getting paid. So, I think if you're saying that, like, you want to pay the least amount of life possible, I think this is still just going to be better overall. The additional cost of being able to discard a card instead is kind of nice. Again, if you're playing something with like Kroxa or a deck that wants to get something into the graveyard, then this is way better if you have that upside. Like I mentioned, the Kroxa comparisons, pretty easy to make. Extra lands are usually fairly free to pitch. Maybe you can combine this with something like Renin 6, so you always have some land to ditch and get it back. Things like that can be solid. Yeah, Traxa, something to give you reanimate value. For the purposes of Shadow, I think that if you're playing Infernal Grasp, you're probably just going straight to Bitter Triumph. If you're playing Shieldred's Edict, then I'd probably bet you're going to stick with Edict, because you probably don't care about the life getting paid. Edict hits creatures or planeswalkers just like this. But I think for most people, if you're playing Edict, you probably value not paying the life, in which case Triumph is probably less appealing to you. So that's my guess. If you're playing Edict, you probably stick Edict. If you're playing Infernal Grasp, you probably move to Bitter Triumph. I don't think it's going to replace like Terminate or something just because of the 3 life. If you're playing Terminate, you're probably sticking with Terminate. Like I'm probably sticking with Terminate in all my red-black builds. But you could also go Dreadbore or something. Let's switch up the order a little bit. I'm going to go over Molten Collapse since we just got off the Destroy Creature or Planeswalker train. So, Molten Collapse, black and a red, sorcery. Sorcery is important to note. Choose 1. If you descended this turn, you may choose both instead. So, remember, descended is if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. Cycle a Wraith, sack a Bauble, sack a fetch land, Thought Scour yourself and mill over a Shadow. Whatever the case may be, permanent hits the graveyard, you have descended. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Or the second ability, destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So, first off, sorcery, destroy target creature or planeswalker, just Dreadbore. So, baseline, Dreadbore. Second ability, destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. Realistic options in Modern include Expedition Map, Amulet of Vigor, the roll token that the Undying decks play, a treasure token off Ragavan, Shadow Spear, Colossus Hammer, Sigarda's Aid. So it's just like kill a hammer in a deck. Hardened Scales, Wicked Roll. Thank you. Let's see what else we got. If there's anything else that it blows up that's relevant. We're not going all the way down to tier 12 modern and nitpicking stuff. I played against the Enchantress deck the other day. They got some like Utopia sprawls and stuff. Hit some of those. Mill, coffers, a set expedition map if they're running that stuff. Hits Chalice, hits EE. Pithing Needle, yeah. I don't think too many people are bringing in Pithing Needle against us, but maybe Pithing Needle out of Hammer Time is like sideboard tech for our EEs. That could be relevant. Already said, like Expedition Map and Shadow Spear, Aether Vial. Also, my son says, hi, what up, Guppy? Springleaf Drum. Like, there's a reasonable amount of targets. I think if you're playing Dreadbore, you're moving to Molten Collapse. Like, it's just Dreadbore with upside, right? Because the baseline, again, is just red and a black, destroy target creature, planeswalker. Literally Dreadbore. And then you have the flexibility of being able to do something else. I do like that this can just be red and a black, destroy something small. I wish it was creature as well, but you can always just destroy a creature with the front half. But I wish you could like destroy a reasonable creature and then also kill a 1-mana creature. But not the way it's worded, whatever. It is interesting that it can hit enchantments. Not a lot of 1-mana enchantments rolling around, but red and black being able to hit enchantments is cool. So, yeah, again, I think if you're running like Terminate or something, I'm sticking to Terminate. I think the instant speed is way too relevant, especially with like Undying effects rolling around. So I want to keep the instant speed if I can, but if you're looking for like a flexible sideboard option to be able to take out whatever, and you've got a meta full of hardened scales and hammer and things like that, then absolutely roll with it. See how it goes. Report back. Let us know. Next up, the Ancient One. Oh, so we've got blue and a black for an 8/8. 8/8 for 2 mana. Blue and black. Legendary creature, Spirit God. Descent 8. This can't attack or block if you have less than 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. So 7 permanents, no attacky, no blocky. 5 a turn, or 5 permanents, definitely no attacky, no blocky. 2 blue and a black. Draw a card, then discard a card. When you do, target player mills equal to that card's mana value. So best case scenario, 4 mana, ditch like a Street Wraith, mill 5. So first off, I want to talk about the face card here. And then I've got a little bit of side story to go into. So base card is 2 mana 8/8. Can't attack or block unless you got a whole mess of permanents in your yard. And then 2 blue and a black, loot. Kind of cool. The stat line, obviously fantastic. 2 mana 8/8. Really cool. I wish it had some sort of evasion or some sort of self-protection, even if it was just like Ward 2. I mean, if you play this out on turn 2, you're going to be sitting there with it for a minute before you're able to actually start attacking or blocking. So now on to the side story. So I jammed together like a Grixis Shadow list on Tapped Out and was just running like the Ragavans, 4 Darcy, Baubles, Wraiths, Fetch Lands, this. I did not put anything over the top or outside of normal lists, outside of Street Wraith, to try to enable it. And I just wanted to see like how reliably I could get it online. And turn 4 was not crazy. Like I'd probably say 50% of the games, it was online turn 4. Again, this is like Darcy's, Baubles, Wraiths, whatever, trying to fill up the graveyard. Like turn 4 online. There were a handful of games got it online turn 3. So being able to like double Wraith plus like fetch Bauble on turn 1, Bauble yourself, Wraith, draw something, Wraith again, fetch. That's 4 permanents in your graveyard already. So non-zero amount. Now, the other side of that is I did try gold fishing with some cards that took advantage of it being a 2-mana 8/8. Things like the 3-mana Obnixilis that you can sack and immediately ult it. The 3-mana green enchantment Fight Rigging that lets you hide away 5. Let's bring that card up real quick. Fight Rigging. So it's a 3-mana enchantment with Hideaway 5. And beginning of combat on your turn, you put a 1/1 counter on a creature. Then if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, then you can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So dig 5 deep for something, put a counter on this, get to play it immediately. Stuff like that could take advantage of the fact that it's an 8/8. There's like fling effects here and there. So, bunch of cool stuff. I don't really want to play the card if it's just to do something else and like throw it away on turn 3. Yeah, Dress Down, Magic Dan. Dress Down allows it to attack or block. So like there's ways of getting around that requirement that aren't too bad, or ways to take advantage of it being like a very good, reasonable body that aren't bad. So just keep that in mind when you're considering the card. I think turn 4, 5, having it online without needing any ridiculous amount of outside influence is reasonable. But if you've got something to take advantage of it being a 2-mana 8/8 earlier than that, then that certainly helps the stat line. And the last card, kind of along the same lines, Wail of the Forgotten, blue-black sorcery, descend 8, choose 1. If there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard as you cast this spell, choose 1 or more instead. So you've got the first ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Second ability, target opponent discards a card. Third ability, look at the top 3 of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. So another card that I think is, it's only really good if you've got the Descend available and you're able to choose all 3, because otherwise you have like an unsubstantiated sorcery speed. You've got a Piracy Charm for an extra mana at sorcery speed. And you've got an Anticipate at sorcery speed. Like, well, all 3 of those are kind of bad at sorcery speed. But if you're able to break this Descend idea, and like you're on the Ancient One plan and you're able to get all these modes online, then being able to bounce something, make you discard, and draw a card for 2 mana, pretty solid. So just wanted to point out Wail of the Forgotten because of the conversation going along with Ancient One and the fact that I don't think it's crazy to get it online like turn 4, turn 5, somewhere in there. So yeah, that's all the previews that I know I'm going to be thinking about more when it comes to Shadow. As always, if you got some suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Otherwise, hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.